All right, guys, time for another 50 videos about Nick Rekieta. No, just kidding. What we're actually talking about today is Dragon Age Veilguard, and what an epic disaster that's been. Now, I don't want to talk about what everyone else has been talking about because I haven't actually been following along with the development, the announcement, the backlash, the failure, the critic scores, right? I don't care about any of that. The thing that really interests me about Dragon Age Veilguard is that the previous entry in the series, Dragon Age Inquisition, was the game of the year for 2014. That was the game that Game Journals put out there as game of the year right during the height of Gamergate, right? This is what they tried to prop up during that time period. It was that year's version of Baldur's Gate 3, right down to a T, with like the forced diversity and the weird, bizarre, out of place slash fan fiction, right? You had like, it was a clear downgrade from the earlier games, and especially nowhere near the level of quality as superior Nintendo releases, but uh, all of these issues that the game had were brushed under the rug and ignored, right? If you were listening to critics, there was nothing wrong. This was a great Dragon Age game, but nobody was listening to the critics, right? This is why I say Gamergate won, right? Because when you get right down to it, right, when you ignore all of like the personalities and like the stated goals of Gamergate and like the issues, like at its core, Gamergate was about how video game journalists cannot be trusted ever. And because of how they covered things in 2014, we have seen a very slow and steady decline of relevancy from all of these major gaming platforms to the point where nobody really pays attention to or cares about them at all unless it's the clown on them, right? Nobody trusts game journals. Nobody. So, seeing Dragon Age Veilguard come out and get all these glowing reviews, seeing them try to do this thing where they try to say this is like a great follow up and a great game, hardcore fans and casual players are just kind of like, haha, no, we're not falling for this. And they're not even buying the game, right? Again, like, we know it's bad when we're at the point where people are so familiar with the general patterns that the instant that game journals start doing their thing of like complaining about the chuds and complaining about the backlash towards BioWare and like the recent happenings, what they're doing. There is no defense for modern BioWare, right? Because after Dragon Age Inquisition, they put out Mass Effect Andromeda. They put out Anthem, right? They have lost all of the credibility that they've had since Knights of the Old Republic came out, right? BioWare is absolutely a shell of its former self, and all of its fans know it, right? I know people who would go so far as to say Mass Effect was a major step down for the company, right? After what they did with Knights of the Old Republic, right? Like, the studio just failed to retain relevancy, right? They reached all these insane heights with the Mass Effect trilogy, right? They normalized a bunch of 2008 era progressive talking points, right? They legit had like lesbian characters, like in a lesbian race in the Asari in Mass Effect, right? They got away with all this bullshit that nobody should have gotten away with, right? They had all these stereotypes, including like a token conservative character who's wrong about everything, right? They did everything that people hate today in Mass Effect. The difference now is that we live in a post Gamergate world, and more people are starting to see through the obvious propaganda, the obvious pandering, the obvious narratives, the attempts at trying to gaslight people into thinking trannies are real women. Like, it's just a complete and utter train wreck in every sense of the word. And more and more people are starting to catch on to the fact that the ideology takes the forefront when it comes to decisions in development, right? They don't think about like how to make a fun game or what the story's gonna be or like how they're gonna innovate from the last one. No, what they want to do is normalize woke culture in the masses by shoving it everywhere and trying to get as many people on board with their nonsense as possible. And we've seen how this fails, right? We've seen people slowly start pushing back against singular they them pronouns. It's more commonly known now that that's not a real thing. You see people pushing back against trannies. You see people pushing back against like gay culture even. Like recently I had this really insane like situation where like a chick actually shit on a gay man, right? She actually called him out on his nonsense. And it really felt like a major like culture shift moment for me personally because traditionally white women have been the biggest enablers of gay culture, right? They're the people who fetishize it and prop it up on a pedestal and try to normalize it and like so seeing them like start to turn on their pets in this way is really telling as to like where the culture is heading, where like you can't downplay the true nature of these people, right? You can't hide the fact that they are disgusting human beings who want disgusting things for other people, who want to ruin like all of society, right? Like it cannot be understated just how deplorable the average game developer is today because all of them are on board with the Marxist message, right? They're all communists, trying desperately to try and get their viewpoints to be accepted by the masses. But more and more, these attempts are falling flat on their face to the point where I really don't expect this to be a thing like 10 years from now. Like when you compare where it was like 2014, where I felt like these people were on the up and up and they were taking over, that happened, quote unquote. But when it did, it all just collapsed like really quickly because nothing they did really mattered, right? Their ideas don't work in practice, right? Like, and to me, this feels like the decline period where like people are beginning to realize that this ideology is stupid. The people who believe in it are cultists and they should be disregarded and ignored. And when it comes to entertainment properties, when it comes to stuff like Joker 2 or The Last of Us Part 2 or Ghost of Yabel or this, right? When it comes to like woke motivated decisions in game design, like people are automatically going to reject them without even really thinking about it. I don't think anybody saw that initial trailer for Dragon Age and thought this was going to be some big exciting thing. People saw it and were just like, this is another one of those. And they shut it off and played some more Pokemon.